And a huge warm welcome to my guest today, Charlotte Jones, who I'm really excited to chat to about history and the Brontë Birthplace. But first, before we get into that, let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Charlotte Jones is the Education Officer at the Brontë Birthplace in Thornton, Bradford. History has always been a lifelong passion of hers, and she spends most of her free time reading and researching history and visiting historical sites. She has been providing historical workshops for many years, covering everything between the Stone Age and the Empire Windrush. She has worked hard to complete her history degree alongside working and looking after her 2 children. I can't wait to dig deeper into the fantastic offering that this place has. So without further ado, let me please welcome Charlotte to the podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. Thank you so much for giving your time today. I think it's really important for us to showcase the amazing work that is going on in some of the most fantastic sites that we have across the UK. And I'm really, really excited to share the things that you've got on offer at the Brontë Birthplace. So can you start us off and tell us a little bit about your love of history, how that passion has led you into your role at the Brontë Birthplace?
So, I have to start by thanking my parents for literally dragging us to every single castle and National Trust site, probably across the entire country, whether we wanted to go or not as children. And I think they really fostered this deep love and appreciation for history. And it started off as an appreciation rather than a love. You know, that I wanted to go to Alton Towers and they wanted to take us to a castle. And now looking back, I'm so grateful for that. And then I think there were 2, probably what I describe as canon events now when I look back on just this enormous love of history. And that was a school trip to a local industrial museum. And they had a classroom and we had to dress up and we went to this Victorian classroom and it was just so fantastic. And I think it was really a moment where I thought, yeah, this is really interesting and really cool. And then when I was probably 9 or 10, I watched a film called Memphis Belle.
Right.
About a B-17 bomber crew, and it was just this light bulb moment that was like, oh my God, this is amazing and I need to know everything. And I mean, my true major passion is the Second World War. I'm obsessed with it. And I think that has just stayed with me. I went through a phase being a teenager where it kind of wasn't cool, but it was still there. Yeah. Always secretly wanted a jukebox for my bedroom, a 1950s jukebox. Had this.
Did you get one?
Never got one.
Oh.
I know. Gutted. But it was just always there, sort of quietly bubbling away. And then I think when I hit my 20s and I just thought, I don't really care about being cool anymore. I'm just gonna embrace this love, and then it's just taken over. So I was working in jobs that I loved. I worked for the NHS for 10 years in elderly care, and then went to, after I had my son, saw an administrator job at his school. I thought,
right,
that'd be great. That'd be perfect. It works around the children. School holidays a lot. Brilliant. Never thought in a million years I'd get it, and I got it. And worked there really happily for a good few years, just quietly doing my history thing on the side, just for me. And then I plucked up the courage and decided I was going to go ahead and do my history degree with Open Uni. That was quite terrifying, but I got started with that and thought, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. And then lockdown happened, and I think in some ways lockdown was, it was horrendous and affected so many people in so many drastic ways. But for me, that was kind of the catalyst that gave me an opportunity. The school where I was working at, their year 6 group should have gone to a museum there's a museum up here called Eden Camp, and it's all about the Second World War, and everyone goes there. Everyone in Yorkshire is like, you go to Eden Camp, and we couldn't go because of COVID. And the head was telling me and said, "Oh, it's such a shame, we can't go." And I worked with my best friend in that office, and she was nudging me, and she said, "You could do something." I was like, "No, I can't do anything. Look, I can't do anything." And she's like, "No, you could do something. You could do something." So I very kind of sheepishly went, "I could maybe do something." And they jumped on it, and it was about an hour long sort of question and answer session just about the Second World War. And then they were like, "That was amazing. Could you do a full day?" So I was like, "Oh,
Wow.
yeah, okay then." So I did a full day on World War Two. Got dressed up because I love any chance to get dressed up in a historical costume. And then other teachers were seeing it and said, "Oh, could you do something about Victorians?" I was like, "Yeah." And it just snowballed. And then the chief exec of the trust found out. We had a number of primaries within the trust and said, "I want you to roll this out and offer this to everybody." So then I spent 5 years kind of the next 5 years going around and doing workshops around all the primaries, covering everything from Stone Age right up until Empire Windrush. And it was fantastic. And just, I'd stand up there in front of these kids, and it was almost like a weird kind of feeling where I thought, "God, I'm actually doing this. I'm doing this." And they like it. They keep
Yeah.
rebooking. Um, so I was doing that, quite happy doing that alongside being the office manager at school. And then it was one of my colleagues, and he said, "Hey, look at this," and showed me a Facebook post for an education officer at the Brontë Birthplace. And I was like, "Oh my God, I could do that. I could so do that.
Yeah.
I could absolutely do that." Um, Sent my application in, and I just kind of thought, well, if I get shortlisted, I'll be really happy. And then I got shortlisted, and it's like, well, I'll just get through if I get through the first round, I'll be really happy. And every stage it got to, I just thought, if this is as far as it goes, I'll be really happy with that.
Mhm.
Um, and then they offered me the job, and I couldn't quite believe it, and it took a long time for it to sink in. But yeah, was just thrilled to bits. So it's been a long slog, and in between all that, 6 years of studying, I graduated in 2024 with a 2-1, which I was so proud of to do around kids
Amazing.
and work. So it just felt a bit like, the dream, you've made it and I've done it. And now I get to talk about history all the time, which is just fabulous for me. And I think my husband prefers it because I don't talk to him about it all the time. So
So it's a win-win all round.
win-win all round, yeah.
What a story. And do you know what I really love about that story is the support that you had from your colleagues and saying, you can do this and why don't you offer this? And that was brilliant. Can you do more? And this opportunity has come up on Facebook. I think you'd be great for it. Like that support around you of people seeing something in you that you were
Yeah.
clearly really passionate about, that you were clearly really good at, and pushing you to progress rather than because they could have quite easily turned around and gone, "Look, she's awesome. We want to keep her."
They could have done, and I was really, really lucky. It got to a point where it was actually my contract was rewritten because so many people wanted workshops. So my contract was rewritten so that one day a week I was contracted to go out and
Great.
deliver workshops or be working on workshops. So they were so supportive and so enthusiastic about me doing it. I think they wanted me to do my train to teach with them and be a history teacher. And
Mm,
I was like, if I could just teach primary age history, I'd have done it in a heartbeat. But I said, I don't want to teach secondary. I love secondary kids, they're amazing, but that's not where I felt that my strength was.
yeah.
I like to do all the fun stuff. I like to, be running around the room dressed as a Victorian and, making the kids laugh. And that's where my strength is.
Hmm.
So it was a big decision, and I did think about it for a long time. Think, should I do this? Should I go in properly into teaching? Um, but I would have had to have given up a lot on the other side to do
Yeah,
that. So, but I can't thank them enough. If I hadn't have seen, there's so many things that I think, if I hadn't have seen that job in a school advertised on the classroom door of my son's classroom, if I hadn't have picked him up that day, and just seen that, and then if my best friend hadn't been sat at the side of me when I've got the head telling me that they can't do it, and she's going, "You can do it," and I'm like, "I can't do this," and it was, and if I hadn't discovered the Second World War just as an enormous passion and had felt equipped enough to go and stand in front of 60 children and just say,
yeah.
okay, ask me questions. And then I was stood down and thinking, this possibly wasn't the best format, but but it ended up being a really fun session. And it's so many things have led to this point. But yeah, it's been a ride, and it's been an exciting one.
I think I very much live by the phrase of everything happens for a reason. And I think that that is a real good demonstration of things like falling into a play. Like it was a series of events, wasn't it? That all kind of like went a certain way, and unraveled to kind of reveal this pathway for you to be where you are now. And I've no doubt that, it will continue to happen and there will be other opportunities that come up. And we'll come on to talk about the different things that you offer in a little while, but the whole kind of home education route that you're pioneering at work where you're doing as well. So I think it's so lovely to hear when that happens, when someone kind of has that pathway led into something that they've dreamed of doing and something that they genuinely are passionate about and that they love doing. And one thing that stands out about your journey is the fact that you have juggled it around parenthood as well. It's not just working around being a parent. You studied for your degree around being a parent as well. How was that process for you, doing that juggle as a parent and, following your dream and getting your qualification and having to go to work every day? And do you think that being a parent has kind of influenced your views around history education?
Yeah, I think it has. I was a young mum. I was a teenage mum. I was 18 when I had my daughter, and dropped out of. I was in post 16 when I found out I was pregnant, and kind of dropped out of school just with GCSEs, thinking that that was it. That was my opportunity, and it's gone, and now I need to be a mum. And I've loved being a mum. There's me and my daughter are incredibly close. It was just the two of us for quite a while. And then I had to go out to work. I never wanted her to see me sort of not working, and I always wanted to show her that, a woman can go out and support her family and raise her
Yeah.
children. That's I've always I thought I was a feminist then, and I'm a very very much a feminist now, and want to show my daughter that she can pick any life that she wants to pick. So and I worked in care then and loved
Mm.
it, loved every minute of it. And then when I met my husband, and as my daughter was growing up, and we had our son, and I just thought, now feels like the time to do it. I don't know why I thought that. My son was like 4 years old. And I'm like, yeah, let's throw a degree into the mix,
Yeah.
because clearly things aren't hectic enough.
Yeah.
And it felt like, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And mostly I wanted to do my degree to prove to myself that I knew that I could do it. And then I wanted to have a job in history. And unfortunately, sort of careers in history and heritage, it's hard to get there just by saying, well, I love history and I've spent 25 years, studying, but I don't have a qualification. So I
Right.
knew I needed to get that qualification as well. Um, and I think what it's really done for our family is it's fostered a love of learning. My children have seen me spend my weekends studying and writing essays and sitting exams, and and thrive in doing it, and me
Hmm.
showing them that it's really fun to learn, and it's not. I'm not going to lie, there were a few tears halfway through some of the exams that we had to sit at home during COVID, but the elation at the end, when I've
Yeah.
worked hard and look what's come of it. And I think especially for history is always a topic of conversation in our house. It has to be because, there's all the pictures in my house, as I sit here and I look around and I think, oh my God, I'm looking at Charlotte Brontë at one side of the wall and Henry VIII at the other, and it's just, it's everywhere. And I think history can be seen as quite a boring subject, and oh, it's history.
Yeah.
And I never wanted my children to think that, because it's so amazing, and it unlocks so many things and provides so many skills that you use in everyday life studying history. So being a kind of a history family has really kind of instilled those values into
Hmm.
both my children. They've both worked really hard. My daughter's been to university and graduated with a first class degree, and my son is in year 9 now, and he's absolutely thriving and flying. And but it's that love of learning. It's not a chore.
Yeah.
It only expands your mind and brings opportunity. And I think that's sort of what it's done for our family. And history is always in the heart of that. Um, and plus, I use it, for opportunities. My son's learning about the First World War at the moment, so I've absolutely jumped on that and taken him on a battlefield tour in summer, and it's so I try to jump on those moments, whatever they're learning about at school. It's like, right, well, you're learning about castles, so let's go to on
Hmm.
holiday. We'll go to Dover Castle, and it's I try to link things in. They're called mum days on our holidays. You go and you learn about history on a mum day. Um, but they always have a great time doing it, and it's something that I'm very thankful for, that we've been able to instill in them. Just this, it's a love of learning. It's not a chore. It's a real passion, and it's only there to expand and make things
Yeah.
exciting and interesting. And so yeah, it's been it's a big part of our family, and it's them seeing me do it, I think, has
Yeah.
given them the drive to do it. Well, if mum can do it and do it around, going to work and having two children, but mum can still do it, then I can definitely do it. And my daughter always felt that when she was at uni, she'd ring me up and she'd go, "Oh, I'm so stressed. I've got an essay due on Friday." But she says, "But I feel bad telling you." She went, "Because you've got an essay due, but you've got to go
Oh,
to work every day this week and come home." And said, "But, if I can do it, you can do it, kid." And she blooming did. So it's yeah,
yeah.
it's always felt like a privilege.
I think that's really key what you've said there about kind of, well, two things that you've said. First, that whole kind of role model element of you demonstrating, you're not just kind of saying to your children, about what they're doing or the fact that they can do it, but actually they can see that you're doing it as well. So that kind of element of role modeling, I think, is really important. And then also fostering that love of learning. I think it can be quite easy, especially and I think, we've spoken prior to this, and I think in our conversation we said before, when you find subjects hard, then it automatically becomes a challenge and it's boring and it's not something that you excel in, so you don't try very hard, and it kind of spirals into this. But when you turn it around and it becomes something that you're excited about, and I think as well, it's the delivery of it, isn't it? You get teachers that are so passionate about their topic, which, I mean, I can feel through the screen from you the passion that you have for history. But I think that really matters, in my opinion, because if children see somebody love what they're doing, it makes it so much easier to be a part of it and to kind of foster that love of learning. And I think that is a really important thing. to take away from this is actually having that love of learning and demonstrating that. And, you know, it becomes infectious. You know, the people all around you get excited. And I know
Yeah.
you said like you love to dress up, and just really immersing yourself in the topic that you're talking about, and just getting excited about it. It's hard not to get excited with someone when they're kind of jumping around a room and being really animated about something, and sharing that information. So that clearly filters through what you do in the home, and it's clearly having that effect on your children, which is great. So tell us about Brontë Birthplace. What is it? Where is it? You know, what can you do when you're there?
So the Brontë birthplace, excuse me, is kind of as it suggests. It's a little terraced house in the village of Thornton, just outside Bradford, and it is the home where four of the Brontë children were born. So it's the home that Charlotte, Branwell, Emily, and Anne were born in. The family came to Thornton in, let me get my dates right now. The family came to Thornton in 1815. The children were born in very, very quick succession, and they left Thornton in 1820 with six children then at that point, and
Wow.
that's when they moved over to Haworth. And that's where sort of the whole Bronte legacy is. So we're very new. We were opened officially by the Queen last May. It's been a long slog to get to this point. It's we're a community benefit fund, and we've been raising money. The committee have been raising money for years through selling shares, through crowdfunding, and then Bradford 2020 City of Culture 2025 sort of gave the final chunk to be able to buy the house. Since the well since forever the house has been in private ownership. So since the Brontes left, it's been a butcher's shop, a sweet shop, and everything in between, a private home. One owner in the 80s, a lady called Barbara Whitehead, did have a crack at turning it into a museum, but it never really sort of what's the word? It never sort of took off in that sense.
Right.
It's then been cafes and things like that. So we felt that this building's too important for it to be in private ownership again. So now we're open to the public. We are a museum. We have a little cafe. We have three bedrooms upstairs, which are now all Airbnb rooms as well. We are the only place in the world where you can sleep in the same room that the Bronte children slept in. There is nowhere else in the world that you can do that.
Wow.
And we're an education centre, so and an events space. So we're a lot of businesses in one very small little house. But the response has been amazing. Bronte fans have come from far and wide to visit and to stay. We actually had a lady in last night that came to us from America. We've had
Wow.
we had a lady come from Japan, Canada, um, a vlogger come from Germany. You know, this house for Bronte fans is like a last piece in the
Hmm.
puzzle.
Right.
So for them to be there in that space where, these people were born is it's a powerful place. If you're a major Bronte fan, this is
Hmm.
somewhere that you need to be. The reactions that we've had from people have been amazing, from breaking down in floods of tears to just being so relieved that it's open to the public, and
Yeah.
it will be there forever now. It's not going to be
Mhm.
lost. And so yeah, it's a really amazing space. It's a wonderful little house.
Can't believe how much you've squeezed into that terraced house. Like the amount of offering that you have, and the amount of different kind of interests and needs that you are able to meet in that terraced house. Like that is crazy. It sounds incredible. And I'm assuming that because of the amount that's in there and the size of it, that it's very much centered around smaller groups when they come and visit you.
Yeah, yeah, we are there. There's wonderful things that we can do, but obviously there are certain limitations. So I am restricted on the number of children that we can have in at a time.
Mhm.
Um, but we are starting to get interest from local schools and things. So it's all the education program, obviously still very much in its infancy. I was only brought on last July, so I've not been there. I've only been there sort of 6 months. It's a brand new program, so I've had to basically come in and create a program from complete scratch. We, I know obviously from being an office manager in a school that trips are something that are so well embedded into schools. You know, you do a trip year in, year out because it needs risk assessing, it needs planning, it needs budgeting
Yeah,
for, and so to be a new person on the scene saying, "Wait, come to our place," that takes time. It's
yeah,
not going to happen overnight. It takes time for those schools to think, "Oh, well, maybe we could go there," and so but it is coming. So what I've tried to do is think of creative ways to still be able to offer to groups. So I've put together a huge outreach program, incorporating our Bronte workshops, but also pretty much all the workshops that I was doing before. So our kind of ethos is to educate and to educate about history. So, if you want me to come and teach about ancient Egypt, we'll do that because it's education, it's history education. And that's been really successful. So we've had quite a lot of interest in that so far. So yeah, and then the home educators has been somewhere that I suppose when I first started, it wasn't really something that I initially thought about.
hmm,
And then I got talking to a parent in the summer holidays, and she said, "What, are you going to offer provision for home educated children?" And I thought, "Yeah, I could. I
I
could."
could do that.
And I went home and I kind of started to research it, and I thought, yeah, well, these home educated children still deserve experiences, and a lot of these experiences, like me going to that classroom with my school when I was in year 6, I can't do that as a normal member of the public. That experience is not available to me because that's a school trip thing.
Yeah,
And yes, home educated children have this wonderful flexibility where you can go to a museum anytime you want, but is it the same walking around a museum to enjoying a workshop where, with me, you're in the kitchen and we're talking about child labour whilst we're doing Victorian laundry and, making stain removal, and you're helping me hang clothes up, whilst I'm dressed as a Victorian and in full character. It's different and you're getting a different
yeah,
experience. And so it's been something that's been really fulfilling and almost helped that we can only have small groups because it
yeah,
means that I can keep those groups small and focused. And it's so something that immediately we thought, this could be a hindrance, has actually created this whole program of lovely stuff because we've had to think outside the box.
hmm. Yeah, I think that's really special. And it's great to have that acknowledgement of, we expect that home educated children, they have that flexibility, as you say, so they can just visit and, visit anytime. So there's no need to create anything additional or specific provision because they can just come and visit whenever. And it's really nice that you've acknowledged that actually they still would miss out if there wasn't specific provision available so that they're having the same experiences as those children that are visiting as part of their school trip, because that, as you say, that immersive way of learning is so powerful. And it kind of leads into my next question around kind of how you enable families and children to connect emotionally to history and the past rather than just kind of reeling off facts and information and just telling
Mm.
them about it. And I guess part of the way that you do that is having that immersive experience. I guess that really helps with connecting
Yeah,
to the information.
I like to try and find an angle. And I think
Right.
something that you have to do when you're delivering history, because you can't get away from the fact that sometimes you need to know dates and you need to know specific facts, but there's a way to do that, and I like to tell stories, and these, and I also like to try and connect it to real life. So I'm very, very lucky that where I work, a lot of it kind of highlights my own family history. Um,
Right.
we we haven't really gone very far geographically of my family. I'm from literally about 3 miles down the road, right back to sort of the 1780s. Um, and my whole family story is that intrinsic story of Bradford through its weaving and its wool production. So my family were weaving at home, and then the whole Industrial Revolution happened and went into mills. So yesterday we had a home education session looking at how the Industrial Revolution affected small villages like Thornton. So we can look at what they were doing before the Industrial Revolution, and they were working at home in their cottages. And because I have that family experience of that, I can take them censuses with my family on it. I can take them pictures
Right.
with my family on them, and tell really, the emotional stories, when you tell someone that, like my grandma, my dad's mother, she's the first generation of our family who never had to work in a mill, going back nearly
Really?
over 150 years, and I think when you can put it in terms like that, they're not just strangers in a picture from, 100 years ago.
Yeah.
These are real people. We talk a lot about the conditions living in Thornton, and how life expectancy at one point was only 18, and why it was so low, and all these things around. And yeah, you have to judge sometimes, the age group that are coming, and how to, but I think what I never try to do is dumb it down. Children are intelligent, even, year three, year four age. They are amazing, and they want to soak it up, and they want the gory detail. They want to know that there were no toilets inside, and what do you do when you've been to the loo in the morning? They want to know that, and I think just be honest with them. When big words come up, don't shy away from the big word. Tell them the big word, but then have a conversation about what that means.
Yeah.
We had a massive conversation about what revolution means yesterday, and I think if you can do that, bring in something gory, they love it. Bring in funny things, find funny stories, they love it. And get them involved. One thing that's really amazing about the birthplace, because we don't have original Bronte furniture. That's all very safely in the parsonage at Haworth. We can touch everything. You can sit down
Yeah.
on the chairs. I can open up our cabinets and get things out for you to touch and hold and look at. So it's a really great hands-on place. You can help me do the ironing, and we're not allowed to light the range, but we can use the range, and I can show you how things were done, not just stand back and tell you, you
Hmm.
you can feel the physical strain it takes to scrub clothes clean, and how hard it is to wring them out, and it's when you can do that, children are always going to engage better than me just standing up there
Yeah.
going, this day, this day, this day. And then in amongst that, you can deliver the facts. I usually try and do sort of an information sheet that does have those facts on. And then while I'm delivering, we add a lot of extra to that to really
Mhm.
pad it out and bring in those stories. When I deliver my First World War and Second World War workshops, I always start at the beginning by telling them about two or three people that were there and their stories. I'm very lucky that we have lots of sort of first-hand war stories in our family, granddads, great
Okay.
uncles, and things. And when I tell children about these people, And then I go, and they go, Miss, how do you know everything about it? And I say, well, this is my granddad, this is my dad's dad. And they're like, whoa. And when you can personalize it like that, I think you've hooked them immediately, and it's so much better than just standing up there and reeling off facts. It also helps to be dressed in some ridiculous costume. I have driven across town dressed as a land girl, as a Viking, and all sorts, and I think, oh, I hope I don't ever get pulled over because this is going to be one to explain.
I love that though. I think it's so important, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier about having that kind of passion and that excitement when you're delivering the learning, because it just feeds into the children and the young people that you're working with. And we know from kind of thinking about child development and the research that we know about how important experiential learning is, and actually learning hands-on and active learning, getting involved in things, and how that helps to embed the information in the minds of young people as well. So you seem to have that, down to a T at the Brontë Birthplace. It sounds like it's just an absolute hoot the second you walk in the door. It's just like this big immersive experience and character, and I love that, and it sounds really exciting. So I can only imagine to children and young people when they're coming in, the kind of excitement level that brings. What kind of, aside from learning about history, I imagine there are lots of kind of hidden skills that children are learning when they come and learn with you, because it is so expressive. What are some of the other kind of skills that children are going to come away with aside from learning a bit of history?
So I think what we're very lucky to have is this phenomenal story of this family that are at the center of it, and we've got the Bronte family. A lot of what we do is, yes, it's kind of history focus, but we've also got a lot of PSHE in there. We
Right.
cannot teach about the Brontes without understanding the incredible resilience and determination that these three girls had, and their story is still so relevant today. So we have an initiative called Be More Bronte, and it's something that we try and bring in with all our groups that are in there, especially, we really want to instill in our young people that look what these girls, did. And they were born here in this little terrace house in a industrial village in Bradford. They had so many hurdles to overcome, just like we still do today. They were women. They didn't have, endless funds of money. They had family worries living with their brother Branwell, and his sort of mental health problems. They were worried about what would happen to them if their dad died, because the houses were always linked to churches. And so we can really bring that in and say that, if you can have that same determination, that same drive and resilience, you can achieve great things too. So we always try and bring in sort of that PSHE focus, and that
Yeah.
looking at emotion and looking at, you can't learn about the Brontes without understanding just the tremendous heartache and pain that is in this phenomenal family. I think you're also learning, skills like critical thinking. One of the workshops that I do, we look at a Board of Health report was done in Thornton in the 1850s, because living conditions were so horrendous. So I have extracts from the report, and then I have objects and things in the house that, does this corroborate this story? Does this tell us a different thing? You're saying to
Mm.
us that there's no fresh water, but we have a water filter in our house. So I don't understand. And it's about teaching children that, history isn't always written, completely. It leans one way or the other. It has a bias
Mhm.
always because it depends on who's written it and the
Yeah.
people that they're writing it for. So we can always just read it and go, well, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly how it was. Sometimes we have to think, well, you're telling me that there was no clean water, but in this house, and we know in other houses, they had these things like called water filters because we own one here. And then we have a whole conversation about, well, do you think everyone could afford this? Is this? And it opens up this whole conversation of not just taking something as fact because
Yeah.
that's what it says in a document. And I think that's something that is so relevant today, when you're looking on social media and
Yes.
fake news and everything. It's about using your brain and your ideas to think, well, maybe that is something that I need to do a bit more research on and understand a bit more before I just take this, 5-second TikTok as absolute fact. So
Yes.
I'm really trying to lean on that. And then I also want to just teach children just to be kinder to themselves. And, one thing that I have learned, and it wasn't something that I kind of expected to go down, but one thing that I've learned as learning more about the family, and especially Charlotte Bronte, is, the immense feeling of, can I do this? Am I worth this? You see pictures that Charlotte Bronte draws of herself, and she clearly doesn't have a brilliant opinion of her own self-image.
Really.
And then you see pictures that other people draw of her, and she's beautiful, and so I really want children to think about, we do a project of using words to describe yourself, and then give me 3 words to describe your best friend in the whole world. And I can
Yeah.
guarantee that nearly every child will write really almost derogatory things about themselves, because I will too. If someone said that to me, I'd say, well, I'm a bit chubbier than I'd like to be. I've got, I'd like this and I'd like that. And then, but to my friend, my 2 best friends are absolute goddesses to me. They are the most phenomenal women that I will ever meet, and I'm so lucky to have in my life. So why don't we use those same words to
Yeah.
describe ourselves? And so I'm really trying to instill these thoughts and values in the children that come and visit us. So, yes, a lot of it's grounded in history, but so much of that is so relevant to the way we live our lives. And actually, these 3 girls that were living, 150 years ago weren't that different to what we are
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
They were harshly judged. They were just like, we are now, and I think it's a really important lesson. I think sometimes we're quite sort of self-centered in that, this is the world as it is today, and nobody
Mm.
can ever possibly understand what we're going through now because we have, the evil but brilliant social media, and it's no one can understand. But these 3 girls were dealing with the same thing. What the critics were writing about their books, they knew that they were going to be judged. As a female writer, you are judged, your work is judged, you are judged as the woman. If a man is writing something, it's his work that's being judged, not him, his work.
Right.
But as a woman, it is you personally that is being judged. So they just they wrote these phenomenal books that are still phenomenal now. Wuthering Heights is about to come out again, and the craze around it already before it's released is huge, and they still have the power to do that, but they still
Hmm.
had such crippling self-doubt that, and they're not that different to how we are now. And I think it's really important that for children, especially, to understand that and to just be a bit kinder to yourself. We're
Mm.
all going through things. We all struggle. I feel like the biggest imposter when I'm somewhere with a load of other historians and history people, and I think, why am I here? But I shouldn't feel like I'm here because
Yeah.
I've worked long and hard to get here. And it's and I think sometimes we need to be a bit more vocal about that, because then maybe imposter syndrome won't exist anymore if you all think a bit, if you're all just a bit more vocal about it, you know. And so
Yeah.
I'm trying to really instill that in the children that come and visit, and work with that.
And I think as well, in those rooms that you're talking about, when you go in and you feel like an imposter, the others are probably feeling the same. And this is what we don't kind of, we do get a bit kind of self-involved, for want of a better phrase, in those moments, because all we can feel is our own kind of inadequacy in those moments. But actually, I speak to lots and lots of people who, progress along their career and get to, very senior positions within their careers, and they still feel like imposters. And I think we don't realize sometimes that actually we're all just feeling like imposters in what we're
Yeah.
doing. And it is a really it's a hard space to be in. And I think talking about it does help to
Yeah.
go towards us understanding that actually we shouldn't feel like this. We deserve a seat at that table. We've worked hard for it, and this is the value that we're bringing into it. So I think it's a really, really important skill to be working on when you're a child. So I love that you bring that element into it, because you are 100% right. If you're asked to describe yourself and then asked to describe somebody that is close to you that you love, the terminology is very, very different a lot of the time.
Yes.
And that's just what we're like as human beings, isn't it? So it's great that you instill that into it. And I think you do a very good job of contextualizing things, like just talking to you now, and when you're explaining what you're doing and how you do it and the examples that you give. I think you're incredibly talented at taking that and contextualizing it so that we can relate to it and we can understand it. And you've got examples coming out of your ears, whether they're within the work that you do or within your family context, within the locality of where you're based. You're clearly very knowledgeable and passionate about what you do. So I think you do a great job of bringing that in. So I can see how children would really benefit from being in that environment and learning in that way. Do you ever find, because I've worked with children in the past as well, so do you ever find that you've got this plan of how you want this workshop or this session to go, and the children come in and they ask particular questions or they go down particular rabbit holes, and it just completely changes how the session happens? Like, how do you manage that curiosity within a group of children and still meet the kind of criteria that you want to meet in your workshop?
Absolutely. It almost never goes to the plan that you put in place. To the point where I think because I've got experience of it now, I kind of almost don't write a plan. I have in my head
Wing it.
a basic sort of core knowledge that I think I have to get this over to the children. This is what they've come for. This is what we're going to get. But I think sometimes it's brilliant to just be able to kind of let them lead it a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, and then what I then tend to do is, after I've done it a couple of times, think, right, this is what they want to know about. So let's build that in. I think a great example is from when I've been doing my World War II workshop. And the first couple of times I thought, right, this is what the schools have wanted me to focus on, the home front in Britain. So what's going on here? And we were doing that. I was focusing on that. We had lots of lovely crafts and things, and we do a practice air raid, and I get them all under the desks and things like that. And it's all the schools like, what's going on? So Charlotte's doing an air raid for year six. It's all right, don't worry. And then I kind of gave myself kind of like 10-15 minutes at the end for questions. Completely underestimated the level and amount of questions a year six group will have about the Second World War. So now it's at the beginning of the session, I do explain, I know what questions you want to ask. I know that you are desperate to go down the rabbit hole of, the conspiracy theory of did Hitler survive the war and go off to Argentina and live the rest of his life. I know you want to ask that. So at the end, we now have half an hour for questions so that we can explore all of that, but we can also fit in exactly what the teacher wants me to fit into the day. Um, and then I think it's just about taking your lead from the children. There are
Yeah.
times where I will think, this is a really great activity. I think the kids are going to love this activity. And then you kind of get halfway and they're looking about like, and like, oh, okay, right, come on, let's jump up and we'll go and do something physical. So I think it's about being able to think on your feet quickly,
Mhm.
and knowing that you're gonna make a few mistakes, because not all groups of children are the same. Some groups are really gonna love this bit, other groups are really gonna love that bit. And I think if you explain that to them as well and say, right, kids, this is the stuff that your teacher wants me to tell you. Let's do this, and then we can do that. And then, so I think, it gives them a little bit of ownership of it as well.
Mhm.
It's like, well, where do you want to go now? What would you like to do? We had a lovely session yesterday with I did a workshop. We only actually had two children come, but it was really lovely because we were able to really tailor it to the two
Mhm.
children that were there, and they had such a great time. And their parents were like, "This was so great! I learned so much." But because it was such a small group, it was almost just sort of on a friendly level and a non. It wasn't what's the word that I'm looking for? It wasn't quite so structured. We could be a bit more free with it. We did a
Yeah.
tour around the village, and I could show them little interesting things that possibly I wouldn't have been able to show them had I had a group of 16 children and their parents there. So it is about being adaptable and reading those little faces in front of you and thinking, right, we planned half an hour on this, but we're maybe only going to need 15 minutes and then we'll move on and we'll give them more time here.
Yeah.
So things never go to plan, never ever go to plan. I can do a workshop in one school and it'd be fantastic. You can go to another school and you can come out at the end of the day and you think, oh God, I don't know if they enjoyed that. And I think that's just, I always see a difference, especially if it's like a two form entry. One class will be really, really super engaged, love every minute of it. The other class won't be quite so focused, and there's always a difference between the classes. And I think that's just the children that you've got there. Maybe the day that you've picked, would it be better to do this at the beginning of the week rather than the end of the week?
Yeah.
And you just don't know until you're there. But it's about having that bank of knowledge in your head so that if you do need to change, you can do.
Hmm.
And really reading the room. You have to be able to read the room and think, I know we planned this, but we might need to do
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah. And I think that's just education in general, isn't it? And I think that's the kind of skill that people who are teaching or educating young people kind of have to take on board, is that whole reading the room and being able to flex and change
Yeah,
as needed. And I think that that's the beauty of teaching is having to flex and change. And like you say, as long as you've kind of got an overall goal that you want to achieve and you can achieve that, how you achieve it in the moment might look different with the first class than it will with the second class,
yeah,
and it might look different with the school that you visited to the home educated children that visit you. And it's just,
absolutely.
and it goes to show how complex and what's the word I'm looking for, like how much expertise that educators bring to a situation, isn't just a case of, right, I'm going to deliver this information to these children and they're going to learn. Actually, every day is going to look completely different, and that can be really beautiful. I think it's something also that parents might find challenging, is kind of wanting to instill a love of history and learning with their children, but if they're not really feeling like they're an expert in history themselves, like what advice would you give to parents that want to instill this into their children but feel a bit worried about it?
I think it's one of those subjects where there are so many resources that you can use that it can almost become a bit overwhelming, and
Mm,
and you don't know where to look. And I think there's also maybe a little bit of snobbery around history. It's like, well, don't use Wikipedia because those facts on there might not be right. Use this enormous history book instead that was, and I think it can be daunting and completely overwhelming. But I think that, places like Wikipedia and YouTube and even TikTok to an extent can be good places to start, and you think, right, well, how on earth do I explain to my 12-year-old the origins of the First World War? It's even for someone that studied it extensively, it's still like, oh my God,
Mm.
there's a lot. And it really can be, but there's so many great resources out there and historians that are really now sort of tapping into these sort of quick sound bites and short videos that help you to explain. And you don't need to go and surround yourself by books in a library now to learn history. Look at what's around you. There are so many places where you can go and visit that will tell you so much about where you are. Your local village. If you're in a small village, research your village. Go and
Yeah.
have a look outside. The people that were on our workshop yesterday were amazed by all the things that were still very visible as leftovers of the Industrial Revolution, that you think that, and all they kept saying to me was, I would have just walked past that. I would have just walked past that and I wouldn't have even thought
Yeah.
about it, and I think so sometimes, looking around where you are, research your city, research your town, your village, see what happened there, see how old it is, and there's always something, some part of time that you can build in, when I'm teaching about the Vikings and we talk about the language that the Vikings gave us,
Mm.
words that we still use today. And, even as someone who, I mean, my house is full of books. I love reading. But even for me, sometimes you think, oh God, I can't face picking up a book, or,
Yeah.
these living history TV programs where they stick, six celebrities in a workhouse for 24 hours. These can be really, really great places to start, and they
Hmm.
they are often, the entertainment value is there, but you do have the facts coming in underneath, and they can be really great places to then use as a springboard to go
Hmm.
off and do a bit more research, and I mean, it brings in your critical thinking as well. There's nothing wrong with starting with Wikipedia. Start with Wikipedia and then go off and look and check those facts.
Yeah.
It can almost be a lesson in itself. Right, let's find a Wikipedia page on, this subject. Let's go and see if we can, fact find all of the information
Yeah.
that's in there. The thing that brought me to history is a fantastic film full of historical inaccuracy, and the more I've learned about it, I'm like, oh, well, it's not like that in the film. But and I say this a lot to people, especially people sort of coming back to this new Wuthering Heights film. They're like, oh, it's not a real adaptation, and it's not. And it's like, to me, it doesn't matter what brings you to it. If what
Yeah.
brings you to, Shakespeare is the lovely Leonardo DiCaprio as Romeo, or what brings you to the Brontes is this enormously stylized but beautiful adaptation of it with the wonderful, Jacob Elordi. As my daughter's obsessed with Jacob Elordi, so she's gonna go and watch it. But that's what's bringing her to it, and if that's what brings you to it and is the hook that pulls you in, and then from that you use that as a springboard to just learn everything. I think everyone that loves history has a niche, and you will find that there was something that hooked them into that niche, and they've been obsessed with it ever since. And for me, it was a film, and that has taken over my entire life. And it doesn't matter what gets you there. It doesn't matter whether it was a TikTok video, a silly song in horrible histories, or, an old documentary from the 90s that you've watched on YouTube, if that's what hooks you and then draws you into that world, use it. If your child is a visual learner, I am so much a visual learner. I can sit and read a book for an hour and think, I don't really know what I've just read. And then I can watch a documentary about it and it's in and it will stay
Yeah.
there. You know, use that. Take them to physically see things. Find a documentary on it. Find funny videos on it on YouTube, on TikTok, wherever. Use those as that hook. And once you've
Hmm.
found that hook and that way that your child is going to learn it and understand it and enjoy it most of all, then you've cracked it. And I think history's a really great way to do it. Don't be overwhelmed. You don't need the academic, big, thick, heavy going books. You don't need that until much later on. You know, if
Mm.
you use all this wonderful stuff that we have around us that makes history accessible and enjoy it. Most of all, enjoy it. If it's boring you and you're falling asleep, then that's not the way you need to learn.
Yeah.
And I think once you've found that way of learning it, then you'll never look back. And I think don't be a snob about it. Don't be embarrassed about it. If horrible histories is what brought you there, fantastic. If a blockbusting movie actor brings you there, brilliant. Run with it.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
I love the positive spin that you've put on this. I love that it's not being so focused on you need to get the facts right and you need to make sure that your information and that's saying a lot coming from me where recap is very much around making sure that you have trusted incredible information, things like that. But I love the kind of positive spin that you've put on that and actually using it as getting the interest there first. And you touched upon earlier, it's about the discussion, isn't it? It's about
Mm,
having those discussions, using your critical thinking, picking it apart, and that's how you find your facts and that's how you find the information and it kind of grows from there. But actually having the hook and having that passion and that love for learning and that interest in a topic first and foremost is what's going to then drive you through maybe some of the more kind of mundane droll
yeah.
information that you have to
Yeah.
sift through to get the facts.
And I think once you're enjoying it, you start to enjoy the mundane facts. You know,
Yeah.
I love a good census. I love a good, you know, bills of mortality. These things are really great. And but if you were just faced with that as a document,
Yeah.
you'd be like, oh. Tell me about it. Tell me the reasoning. Tell me what's going on around it, and then you can really start to absorb it and love it. And then that mundane and the research that felt so overwhelming at first is a breeze then because you're already enjoying it. You're already loving the time period or the subject that you're learning
Yeah.
about. And I do it in everything, and I think it's probably one of my husband's biggest bugbears. I can't watch anything historical without pausing it. And my number one Google thing is like, how accurate is how accurate was Braveheart? How accurate was this? And then I go, well, that bit wasn't accurate because I didn't do that in real life. My husband's like, just watch it and enjoy it.
Just
But
watch the film.
you'll find that the mundane, because history, at the end of it all, there is a lot to do. There's a lot to
Mhm.
write about. There's a lot to read about. There's no getting away from that. But once you already enjoy the thing, it makes all that so much easier and enjoyable.
Mhm.
And you want to write about it then, and you want to research it. So, it leads on, and then it just
Yeah.
becomes a joy then, and just you're already loving it. You're already loving the learning of it, and you want more. And I think that's what makes it important to find that hook to bring you in. Don't start
Mhm.
with the mundane. Don't start with the heavy research. Understand why you want to research it.
Mhm.
And family history is a really good one for that. When you look at your family history, if that's what you're doing, and that'll help you understand things more. So then you've got an invested, you're invested in it
Yeah.
already because it's your family. And that leads to, wider knowledge and looking at the world around you. And I think it's once you've got that, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, that is a great tip. And I think bringing in your family context is fantastic. little tidbit from this for people to take away, because I think that's a really clever way of getting that investment into a topic. So I think that's great. How can people find out more? So obviously, if they're local to your area, they can come and visit. But if they're not, do you have a website? Do you have social media? How can people kind of keep an eye on what you're doing?
We do. We've got social media, so we've got Facebook, Instagram. We're venturing into the world of TikTok at the moment. We've got some fantastic younger volunteers who are making us some brilliant TikToks
Oh,
on a
brilliant.
weekend. So we have our social media where we're advertising what's coming. We also have a website that's got our What's On page, so that tells you about all the events coming up. We've also got a dedicated education page. We do have obviously our school workshops, but we also have a dedicated page to home learners. So at the moment, I'm putting together my sort of program of workshops. I'm hoping that this year we can get them online so that I can also do workshops via Teams and Zoom so that children that are
Amazing.
further away can still access those. So hopefully in the not too distant future there will be a nice long list of all the workshops so that you can just pick and choose what you want to book on. We are also offering one-to-one sessions now. So if a group session just isn't right for your child, but you still want to come, you can book a private session just with myself for an hour. Or if there's something that you really are struggling with and you're just like, I don't feel that I know enough about this subject, but
Mm,
my child wants to understand more, we're there to help. All my contact details are on the website. So even if you've just got a question, Charlotte, I don't know where to go with this, I'm there. We want to be a supportive education hub for everybody. I'm also working on at the moment as well, sort of a bank of downloadable resources. So there will be some sort of simpler resources that will be free, but then I'm also wanting to create sort of some more in-depth bundles. So you can buy like a World War II bundle or a Victorians and things like
fab.
that. So I'm working on those at the moment as well. There's a lot going on, but it's all really exciting and really positive. So the best place to head to is the website. It's just brontebirthplace.com. All my contact details are on there. And if anyone needs anything or wants anything or just advice, I don't know where to go with this. I don't know, my child wants more of this and I don't feel that I can give it, that's what we're there for. We're there to help and support. So yeah, it's all very exciting.
Thank you. What I'll do is I'll put links underneath the episode so that people can find you really, really easy. And, they need to be following you online because it sounds like you've got so much in the pipeline coming as well. So to keep on top of all these things as they're coming out, it would be great to follow online. So I'll pop everything underneath the episode so it makes it really easy for people to just reach out, and incredibly kind of you to offer that support as well for people that just might have questions, and that's incredible. So just to bring it to a close, thinking about the people that do come and visit you and engage in learning at the Brontë Birthplace, what one kind of feeling would you like to spark in children that they leave with once they've visited you?
I think I'd like to spark a feeling of I want to know more.
Mm.
I always like to leave a museum thinking, oh God, I want to know more now. I want to know, and I think just to leave our place thinking that was the best day ever. Now I want to know more would be
Mhm.
the best thing. I think about how I felt about that school trip that I went on and those experiences that, my mum and dad gave me that just left me wanting more all the time. So if I can spark that in just one child, that they think when they're in their 40s, God, they can look back and think, God, that woman with the bright red hair used to come to my school all the time and talk to us about history. And because of her, I wanted to know more and I did more research, or I wanted to study history at GCSE and A level and things like that. If I can do that in just one child, then my job is done. So if children can leave our place thinking either that was great and amazing, I've had such a brilliant day, and I want to know more, then my job is done. And that's all I want. At the end of the day, I want them to have a really great time, but I also want them
Yeah.
to think, I could learn a bit more about the Industrial
Hmm.
Revolution, or I could learn a bit more about the Brontes, and maybe we could go to Haworth now and go and see what they did there. And so if I can just spark that, then I go home happy every day.
Amazing. Charlotte, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today and sharing your incredible passion, because as I said, it is just coming through the screen at me and it makes me excited and me want to learn more. So I can only imagine that the children that come and visit you will definitely leave feeling the same as well. But thank you for sharing your expertise, your enthusiasm, and the information that you've shared about this particular topic as well. I've learned things today that I didn't know previously. So yeah, it's been incredible having you on. So thank you for taking the time, and I look forward to seeing how it develops going forward and following your journey.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really great.
Thank you.